Donald Trump was born on June 14, 1946, at Jamaica Hospital in the borough of Queens, New York City. His father was Frederick Christ Trump, a Bronx-born real estate developer whose parents were German immigrants. His mother was Scottish-born housewife Mary Anne MacLeod Trump. Trump grew up in the Jamaica Estates neighborhood of Queens and attended the Kew-Forest School from kindergarten through 7th grade. At age 13, he was enrolled in the New York Military Academy, a private boarding school. In 1964, he enrolled at Fordham University. 2 years later he transferred to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, graduating in May 1968 with a B.S. in economics. Profiles of Trump published in the New York Times in 1973 and 1976 erroneously reported that he had graduated first in his class at Wharton, but he had never made the school's honor roll. In 2015, Trump's lawyer Michael Cohen threatened Fordham University and the New York Military Academy with legal action if they released Trump's academic records. While in college, Trump obtained 4 student draft deferments. In 1966, he was deemed fit for military service based upon a medical examination, and in July 1968 a local draft board classified him as eligible to serve. In October 1968, he was medically deferred and classified 1Y. In 1972, he was reclassified 4F due to bone spurs, which permanently disqualified him from service. Family. His father Fred Trump started working in real estate with his mother Elizabeth when he was 15. After his father Frederick had died in the 1918 flu pandemic. By 1926, their company, E. Trump & Son, was active in the New York boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn. It would grow to build and sell tens of thousands of houses, barracks, and apartments. Fred claimed to be Swedish amid the anti-German sentiment sparked by World War II. Donald Trump also claimed Swedish heritage until 1990. Trump's mother Mary Anne MacLeod was born in Scotland. Fred and Mary were married in 1936 and raised their family in Queens. Trump grew up with 3 elder siblings, Mary Anne, Fred Jr., and Elizabeth, and younger brother Robert. Wives and children. In 1977, Trump married Czech model Ivana Zelničková. They have 3 children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, and 10 grandchildren. Ivana became a naturalized United States citizen in 1988. The couple divorced in 1992, following Trump's affair with actress Marla Maples. Maples and Trump married in 1993 and had 1 daughter, Tiffany. They were divorced in 1999, and Tiffany was raised by Marla in California. In 2005, Trump married Slovenian model Melania Naus. They have 1 son, Baron. Melania gained U.S. citizenship in 2006. Religion. Trump went to Sunday school and was confirmed in 1959 at the First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, Queens. In the 1970s, his parents joined the Marble Collegiate Church in Manhattan, which belongs to the Reformed Church. The pastor at Marble, Norman Vincent Peale, ministered to Trump's family until Peale's death in 1993. Trump has described Peale as a mentor. In 2015, after Trump said he attends Marble, the church publicly stated he is not an active member of the church. In November 2019, Trump appointed his personal pastor, televangelist Paula White, to the White House Office of Public Liaison. In October 2020, Trump said that he now identifies as a non-denominational Christian. Health. In 2015, Harold Bornstein, who had been Trump's personal physician since 1980, wrote that Trump would be the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency in a letter released by the Trump campaign. In 2018, Bornstein said Trump had dictated the contents of the letter and that 3 agents of Trump had removed his medical records in February 2017 without authorization. Trump was hospitalized with COVID-19 on October 2, 2020, and treated with the antiviral drug remdesivir, the steroid dexamethasone, and an unapproved experimental antibody drug made by Regeneron. He was discharged on October 5. Wealth. In 1982, Trump was listed on the initial Forbes list of wealthy individuals as having a share of his family's estimated $200 million net worth. His financial losses in the 1980s caused him to be dropped from the list between 1990 and 1995. In its 2020 billionaires ranking, Forbes estimated Trump's net worth at $2.1 billion, making him one of the richest politicians in American history and the first billionaire American president. During the 3 years since Trump announced his presidential run in 2015, Forbes estimated his net worth declined 31% and his ranking fell 138 spots. When he filed mandatory financial disclosure forms with the Federal Elections Commission in July 2015, Trump claimed a net worth of about $10 billion. However, fact figures cannot corroborate this estimate because they only show each of his largest buildings as being worth over $50 million, yielding total assets worth more than $1.4 billion and debt over $265 million. Journalist Jonathan Greenberg reported in 2018 that Trump, using the pseudonym John Barron and claiming to be a Trump Organization official, called him in 1984 to falsely assert that he owned in excess of 90% of the Trump family's business, to secure a higher ranking on the Forbes 400 list of wealthy Americans. Greenberg also wrote that Forbes had vastly overestimated Trump's wealth and wrongly included him on the Forbes 400 rankings of 1982, 1983, and 1984. Trump has often said he began his career with a small loan of $1 million from his father, and that he had to pay it back with interest. In October 2018, the New York Times reported that Trump was a millionaire by age 8, borrowed at least $60 million from his father, largely failed to reimburse him, and had received $413 million from his father's business empire over his lifetime. According to the report, Trump and his family committed tax fraud, which a lawyer for Trump denied. The tax department of New York said it is investigating. Trump's investments underperformed the stock market and the New York property market. Forbes estimated in October 2018 that the value of Trump's personal brand licensing business had declined by 88% since 2015, to $3 million. Trump's tax returns from 1985 to 1994 show net losses totaling $1.17 billion over the 10-year period, in contrast to his claims about his financial health and business abilities. The New York Times reported that year after year, Mr. Trump appears to have lost more money than nearly any other individual American taxpayer, and Trump's core business losses in 1990 and 1991, more than $250 million each year, were more than double those of the nearest taxpayers in the IRS information for those years. In 1995 his reported losses were $915.7 million. Business career. While a student at Wharton and after graduating in 1968, Trump worked at his father Fred's real estate company, Trump Management, which owned middle-class rental housing in New York City's outer boroughs. In 1971, he became president of the company and began using the Trump Organization as an umbrella brand. The business had previously used the names Fred C. Trump Organization, Fred Trump Organization, and Trump Organization, but had not had a single formal name. It was registered as a corporation in 1981. Manhattan developments. Trump attracted public attention in 1978 with the launch of his family's first Manhattan venture, the renovation of the derelict Commodore Hotel, adjacent to Grand Central Terminal. The financing was facilitated by a $400 million city property tax abatement arranged by Fred Trump, who also joined Hyatt in guaranteeing $70 million in bank construction financing. The hotel reopened in 1980 as the Grand Hyatt Hotel, and that same year, Trump obtained rights to develop Trump Tower, a mixed-use skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. The building houses the headquarters of the Trump Organization and was Trump's primary residence until 2019. In 1988, Trump acquired the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan with a loan of $425 million from a consortium of banks. 2 years later, the hotel filed for bankruptcy protection, and a reorganization plan was approved in 1992. In 1995, Trump lost the hotel to Citibank and investors from Singapore and Saudi Arabia, who assumed $300 million of the debt. In 1996, Trump acquired a vacant 71-story skyscraper at 40 Wall Street. After an extensive renovation, the high-rise was renamed the Trump Building. In the early 1990s, Trump won the right to develop a 70-acre tract in the Lincoln Square neighborhood near the Hudson River. Struggling with debt from other ventures in 1994, Trump sold most of his interest in the project to Asian investors who were able to finance completion of the project, Riverside South. Palm Beach Estate. In 1985, Trump acquired the Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. Trump used a wing of the estate as a home, while converting the remainder into a private club with an initiation fee and annual dues. In 2019, Trump declared Mar-a-Lago his primary residence. Atlantic City Casinos. In 1984, Trump opened Harrah's, a Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey, with financing from the Holiday Corporation, who also managed the operation. Gambling had been legalized there in 1977 to revitalize the once popular seaside destination. The property's poor financial results worsened tensions between Holiday and Trump, who paid Holiday $70 million in May 1986 to take sole control of the property. Earlier, Trump had also acquired a partially completed building in Atlantic City from the Hilton Corporation for $320 million. Upon its completion in 1985, that hotel and casino were called Trump Castle. Trump's then-wife Ivana managed it until 1988. Trump acquired a third casino in Atlantic City, the Trump Taj Mahal, in 1988 in a highly leveraged transaction. It was financed with $675 million in junk bonds and completed at a cost of $1.1 billion, opening in April 1990. The project went bankrupt the following year, and the reorganization left Trump with only half his initial ownership stake and required him to pledge personal guarantees of future performance. Golf courses. The Trump Organization began acquiring and constructing golf courses in 1999. It owned 16 golf courses and resorts worldwide and operated another 2 as of December 2016. From his inauguration until the end of 2019, Trump spent around one of every 5 days at one of his golf clubs. Branding and licensing. After the Trump Organization's financial losses in the early 1990s, it refocused its business on branding and licensing the Trump name for projects owned and operated by other people and companies. In the late 2000s and early 2010s, it expanded this branding and management business to hotel towers located around the world, including Chicago, Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., Panama City, Toronto, and Vancouver. There were also Trump-branded buildings in Dubai, Honolulu, Istanbul, Manila, Mumbai, and Indonesia. The Trump name has also been licensed for various consumer products and services, including foodstuffs, apparel, adult learning courses, and home furnishings. According to an analysis by the Washington Post, there are more than 50 licensing or management deals involving Trump's name, which have generated at least $59 million in yearly revenue for his companies. By 2018, only 2 consumer goods companies continued to license his name. As of April 2018, Trump and his businesses had been involved in more than 4,000 state and federal legal actions, according to a running tally by USA Today. While Trump has not filed for personal bankruptcy, his over-leveraged hotel and casino businesses in Atlantic City and New York filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection 6 times between 1991 and 2009. They continued to operate while the banks restructured debt and reduced Trump's shares in the properties. Trump University. In 2004, Trump co-founded Trump University, a company that sold real estate training courses priced from $1,500 to $35,000. After New York state authorities notified the company that its use of the word university violated state law, its name was changed to Trump Entrepreneur Initiative in 2010. Books. Trump has written up to 19 books on business, financial, or political topics, though he has employed ghostwriters to actually write them. Trump's first book, The Art of the Deal, was on the New York Times bestseller list for 48 weeks. While Trump was credited as co-author, the entire book was ghostwritten by Tony Schwartz. According to The New Yorker, the book expanded Trump's renown far beyond New York City, promoting an image of himself as a successful dealmaker and tycoon. Trump has called the book his second favorite after the Bible. Wrestling. Trump has had a sporadic relationship with the professional wrestling promotion WWE since the late 1980s. He was inducted into the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame in 2013. Most notably, he shaved Vince McMahon's head after Bobby Lashley represented him in a hair versus hair match against Umaga. The Apprentice. In 2003, Trump became the co-producer and host of The Apprentice, a reality show in which Trump played the role of a powerful chief executive and contestants competed for a year of employment at the Trump Organization. Trump winnowed out contestants with his famous catchphrase "You're fired." He later co-hosted The Celebrity Apprentice, in which celebrities competed to win money for charities. Talk shows. Starting in the 1990s, Trump was a guest about 24 times on the nationally syndicated Howard Stern show. He also had his own short-form talk radio program called Trumped. From 2004 to 2008. In 2011, he was given a weekly unpaid guest commentator spot on Fox and Friends, a role that continued until he became a presidential candidate in 2015. Trump's political party affiliation changed numerous times. He registered as a Republican in Manhattan in 1987, switched to the Reform Party in 1999, the Democratic Party in 2001, and back to the Republican Party in 2009. 2000 presidential campaign. In 1999, Trump filed an exploratory committee to seek the nomination of the Reform Party for the 2000 presidential election. A July 1999 poll matching him against likely Republican nominee George W. Bush and likely Democratic nominee Al Gore showed Trump with 7% support. Trump dropped out of the race in February 2000. 2012 presidential speculation. Trump speculated about running against President Barack Obama in the 2012 election, making his first speaking appearance at the Conservative Political Action Conference in February 2011 and giving speeches in early primary states. In May 2011 he announced he would not run. Trump's presidential ambitions were generally not taken seriously at the time. Before the 2016 election, the New York Times speculated that Trump accelerated his ferocious efforts to gain stature within the political world after Obama lampooned him at the White House Correspondents Association dinner in April 2011. In 2011, the superintendent of the New York Military Academy at the time, Jeffrey Coverdale, ordered the headmaster of the school, Evan Jones, to give him Trump's academic records so he could keep them secret, according to Jones. Coverdale confirmed that he had been asked to hand the records over to members of the school's board of trustees who were Trump's friends, but he refused to and instead sealed them on campus. The incident reportedly happened days after Trump demanded the release of Obama's academic records. 2016 presidential campaign. On June 16, 2015, Trump announced his candidacy for President of the United States. His campaign was initially not taken seriously by political analysts, but he quickly rose to the top of opinion polls. On Super Tuesday, Trump received the most votes, and he remained the frontrunner throughout the primaries. After a landslide win in Indiana on May 3, 2016, which prompted the remaining candidates Cruz and John Kasich to suspend their presidential campaigns, RNC Chairman Reince Priebus declared Trump the presumptive Republican nominee. General election campaign. Hillary Clinton had a significant lead over Trump in national polls throughout most of 2016. In early July, her lead narrowed in national polling averages. On July 15, 2016, Trump announced his selection of Indiana Governor Mike Pence as his vice presidential running mate. 4 days later, the two were officially nominated by the Republican Party at the Republican National Convention. Trump and Clinton faced off in 3 presidential debates in September and October 2016. Trump's refusal to say whether he would accept the result of the election, regardless of the outcome, drew particular attention, with some saying it undermined democracy. Political positions. Trump's campaign platform emphasized renegotiating U.S.-China relations and free trade agreements such as NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, strongly enforcing immigration laws, and building a new wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. His other campaign positions included pursuing energy independence while opposing climate change regulations such as the Clean Power Plan and the Paris Agreement, modernizing and expediting services for veterans, repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, abolishing Common Core education standards, investing in infrastructure, simplifying the tax code while reducing taxes for all economic classes, and imposing tariffs on imports by companies that offshore jobs. During the campaign, he also advocated a largely non-interventionist approach to foreign policy while increasing military spending, extreme vetting or banning immigrants from Muslim-majority countries to preempt domestic Islamic terrorism, and aggressive military action against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. During the campaign, Trump repeatedly called NATO obsolete. Trump's political positions and rhetoric are right-wing populist. He supported or leaned toward varying political positions over time. Politico has described his positions as eclectic, improvisational and often contradictory, while NBC News counted 141 distinct shifts on 23 major issues during his campaign. Campaign rhetoric. In his campaign, Trump said he disdained political correctness and frequently made claims of media bias. His fame and provocative statements earned him an unprecedented amount of free media coverage, elevating his standing in the Republican primaries. Trump made a record number of false statements compared to other candidates. The press reported on his campaign lies and falsehoods, with the Los Angeles Times saying, Never in modern presidential politics has a major candidate made false statements as routinely as Trump has. His campaign statements were often opaque or suggestive. Trump adopted the phrase truthful hyperbole, coined by his ghostwriter Tony Schwartz, to describe his public speaking style. According to Michael Cohen, the Trump campaign was remarkable for bringing fringe ideas, beliefs, and organizations into the mainstream. During his presidential campaign, Trump was accused of pandering to white supremacists. He retweeted open racists, and repeatedly refused to condemn David Duke, the Ku Klux Klan or white supremacist, in an interview on CNN's State of the Union, saying he would first need to do research because he knew nothing about Duke or white supremacists. Duke himself enthusiastically supported Trump throughout the 2016 primary election, and has said he and like-minded people voted for Trump because of his promises to take our country back. After repeated questioning by reporters, Trump said he disavowed Duke and the Klan. Financial disclosures. As a candidate, Trump's FEC required reports listed assets above $1.4 billion and outstanding debts of at least $315 million. Trump had not released his tax returns, contrary to the practice of every major candidate since 1976 and his promises in 2014 and 2015 to do so if he ran for office. He said his tax returns were being audited, and his lawyers had advised him against releasing them. Trump has told the press his tax rate is none of their business, and that he tries to pay as little tax as possible. In October 2016, portions of Trump's state filings for 1995 were leaked to a reporter from the New York Times. They show that Trump had declared a loss of $916 million that year, which could have let him avoid taxes for up to 18 years. During the second presidential debate, Trump acknowledged using the deduction, but declined to provide details such as the specific years it was applied. On March 14, 2017, the first 2 pages of Trump's 2005 federal income tax returns were leaked to MSNBC. The document states that Trump had a gross adjusted income of $150 million and paid $38 million in federal taxes. The White House confirmed the authenticity of the documents. Election to the presidency. On November 8, 2016, Trump received 306 pledged electoral votes versus 232 for Clinton. The official counts were 304 and 227 respectively, after defections on both sides. Trump received nearly 2.9 million fewer popular votes than Clinton, which made him the 5th person to be elected president while losing the popular vote. Clinton was ahead nationwide, with 65,853,514 votes compared to Trump's 62,984,828 votes. Trump's victory was a political upset. Polls had consistently shown Clinton with a nationwide, though diminishing, lead, as well as a favorable advantage in most of the competitive states. Trump's support had been modestly underestimated, while Clinton's had been overestimated. The polls were relatively accurate, but media outlets and pundits alike showed overconfidence in the Clinton victory despite a large number of undecided voters and a favorable concentration of Trump's core constituencies in competitive states. Trump won 30 states. Included were Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which had been part of what was considered a blue wall of Democratic strongholds since the 1990s. Clinton won 20 states and the District of Columbia. Trump's victory marked the return of an undivided Republican government, a Republican White House combined with Republican control of both chambers of Congress. Trump is the oldest person to take office as president. He is also the first president who did not serve in the military or hold any government office prior to becoming president. Protests. In the weeks following Trump's inauguration, massive anti-Trump demonstrations took place, such as the Women Marches, which gathered 2.6 million people worldwide, including 500,000 in Washington alone. Marches against his travel ban began across the country on January 29, 2017, just 9 days after his inauguration. Trump campaign advertisements focus on crime, claiming that cities would descend into lawlessness if his opponent Biden won the presidency. Trump has repeatedly misrepresented Biden's positions during the campaign. Several sources described Trump's campaign message as shifting to racist rhetoric in an attempt to reclaim voters lost from his base. The Trump administration has been characterized by high turnover, particularly among White House staff. By the end of Trump's first year in office, 34% of his original staff had resigned, been fired, or been re-signed. As of early July 2018, 61% of Trump's senior aides had left and 141 staffers had left in the past year. Both figures set a record for recent presidents, more change in the first 13 months than his four immediate predecessors saw in their first 2 years. Notable early departures included National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Approval ratings. At the end of Trump's second year, his 2-year average Gallup approval rating was the lowest of any president since World War II. In January 2020, his Gallup rating reached 49%, the highest point since he took office, with 63% of those polled approving his handling of the economy. His approval and disapproval ratings have been unusually stable. In Gallup's end-of-year poll asking Americans to name the man they admire the most, Trump placed second to Obama in 2017 and 2018, and tied with Obama for most admired man in 2019. Since Gallup started conducting the poll in 1948, Trump was the first elected president not to be named most admired in his first year in office. Social media. Trump's presence on social media has attracted attention worldwide since he joined Twitter in March 2009. He frequently tweeted during the 2016 election campaign and has continued to do so as president. As of October 2020, Trump has more than 85 million Twitter followers. By the end of May 2020, Trump had written about 52,000 tweets. These include 22,115 tweets over 7 years before his presidential candidacy, 8,159 tweets during the 1.5 years of his candidacy and transition period, and 14,186 tweets over the first 3 years of his presidency. Trump has frequently used Twitter as a direct means of communication with the public, sidelining the press. A White House press secretary said early in his presidency that Trump's tweets are official statements by the President of the United States, employed for announcing policy or personnel changes. In March 2018, Trump fired his Secretary of State Rex Tillerson by tweet. Many of Trump's tweets contain false assertions. In May 2020, Twitter began tagging some Trump tweets with fact-checking warnings and labels for violations of Twitter rules. Trump responded by threatening to strongly regulate or close down social media platforms. Fact-checkers from The Washington Post, The Toronto Star, and CNN compiled data on false or misleading claims, and false claims, respectively. As president, Trump has frequently made false statements in public speeches and remarks. The misinformation has been documented by fact-checkers. Academics and the media have widely described the phenomenon as unprecedented in American politics. This behavior was similarly observed when he was a presidential candidate. His falsehoods have also become a distinctive part of his political identity. Despite the frequency of Trump's falsehoods, the media rarely referred to them as lies, a word that has in the past been avoided out of respect for the presidential office. Nevertheless, in August 2018, The Washington Post declared for the first time that some of Trump's misstatements were lies. Promotion of conspiracy theories. Before and throughout his presidency, Trump has promoted numerous conspiracy theories, including birtherism, the Clinton body count theory, and alleged Ukrainian interference in U.S. elections. Trump retweeted a July 2020 video by Stella Emanuel, a Texas physician, promoting an unproven cure for the coronavirus. Her post was subsequently removed from several social networks because it violated their rules on misinformation. Relationship with the press. Throughout his career, Trump has sought media attention, with a love-hate relationship with the press. Trump began promoting himself in the press in the 1970s. Fox News anchor Brett Baier and former House Speaker Paul Ryan have characterized Trump as a troll who makes controversial statements to see people's heads explode. In the campaign, Trump benefited from a record amount of free media coverage, elevating his standing in the Republican primaries. New York Times writer Amy Chozick wrote in 2018 that Trump's media dominance, which enthralls the public and creates can't-miss reality television-type coverage, was politically beneficial for him. Throughout his 2016 presidential campaign and his presidency, Trump has accused the press of bias, calling it the fake news media and the enemy of the people. After winning the election, journalist Leslie Saul recounted Trump saying he intentionally demeaned and discredited the media, so when you write negative stories about me, no one will believe you. Popular culture. Trump has been the subject of parody, comedy, and caricature. He has been parodied regularly on Saturday Night Live by Phil Hartman, Daryl Hammond, and Alec Baldwin, and in South Park as Mr. Garrison. The Simpsons episode Bar to the Future, written during his 2000 campaign for the Reform Party, anticipated a Trump presidency. A parody series called The President Show debuted in April 2017 on Comedy Central, while another one-color cartoon President debuted on Showtime in February 2018. Trump's wealth and lifestyle had been a fixture of hip-hop lyrics since the 1980s. He was named in hundreds of songs, most often in a positive tone. Mentions of Trump in hip-hop turned negative and pejorative after he ran for office in 2015. In December 2016, Time named Trump as its Person of the Year, but Trump took issue with the magazine for referring to him as the President of the Divided States of America. In the same month, he was named Financial Times Person of the Year and was ranked by Forbes the second most powerful person in the world after Vladimir Putin. As president, Trump received the collar of the Order of Abdulaziz Al Saud from Saudi